Okay, we're going to finish up with talking a little bit about records. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of, we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you, we're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we told you in this process. Good teachers use that as a way to get across good points that need to be made. So we're going to finish up with records. And I think that records is one of those things that we often, probably the most difficult thing that we do, because we don't like to keep them. Why do we want to record actions? Chris, how many times did you go out to the hog barn last week? How many times, though? Did you go out twice one day? Okay, but you're not really sure how many times then for the week. It could have been 5 times 7, 35, or 32. Okay, and so there are other things that happen on the farm that are important for your nutrient management plan. And those things need to be recorded. There's an old adage that says, if it isn't recorded, it didn't happen. And so if you have in your nutrient management plan that you should check the level of your storage lagoon weekly, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, even though you may have diligently gone out and looked at it every day. So keeping records is an important thing for you to do to make sure that you're doing all the things that are in your nutrient management plan. Did you have a question? Okay, we'll try to talk a little bit about that. Rhonda is going to pass around some examples of record keeping patterns, things that have been developed for you to keep records of. If you do use the new manure management plan from Purdue, it has a packet of records that they want you to keep for your nutrient management plan. That's in the 3-ring binder that's coming around. Jim Bocat, the previous River Basin watershed manager for UACD, was here, developed a record-keeping booklet that you can carry with you in your pocket and keep track of the things that it says. My best way to do it is to develop one that fits your NMP and keep track of those things, and then anything else that's there. But you have to have it available when you need to put down the record, right? How many of you write in a journal every day? Some of us do. I do. I raise my hand because I do. But it's still difficult for me to remember everything. Let's say I miss a day or two. But I want to have an entry in there for every day. So I go back and I think about what I did. And if I write it the day that I write it, if I do it the day that I lived it, I remember a whole lot more about what happened that day than if I try to do it for the last week. So a record that's well kept is one that's kept when it happens, not one that's kept once a week on Saturday night just before the weekly bath. You decide you're going to go in and keep records for the week. So why do we record our actions? One, it records our compliance with our NMP. When disaster strikes, you have a record. Even if you don't have a permit, and we're not going to have permits, Don tells us we're going to have a permit by the end of the summer. I wouldn't bet on it. But even though you may not have a permit by the end of the summer, if you're keeping track of what's going on, you still have some protection when they come out to talk to you. Mike? Okay, so you need to know a couple of things. One thing is if you have a lagoon, and I don't know that you don't have one, but if you have a lagoon, they're going to ask you to keep track of the level of your lagoon.
Would that be like a weekly type?
Probably on a weekly basis. So not daily.
I think you're asking a daily thing.
No, I think it's a weekly thing, and so maybe you can schedule that just before your weekly bath. You guys all think that's funny. We used to bathe in a tub in the middle of the basement floor, and my dad took a weekly bath. Now, unfortunately, he got to go first, and we all had to follow. But yeah, so that NMP will help you to decide that. But by and large, if you know how much manure you hauled to each field, and you have the soil samples and the manure samples, that's really about all you'll need. Yeah, I would have a note, I would have a clipboard hanging in my tractor. And when I haul a load of manure to that field, I'd mark it that I hauled a load of manure to that field and put the date down. You can use one of these little pocket calendars.
Do we also in that, do we have the nutrient management plan?
You have, the nutrient management plan won't get into whether you're applying those pesticides. It will talk about how you're supposed to store them and take care of them on the place, but not when you applied them or how you applied them or anything like that. Mike and I were just talking about this one. It helps you track your manure applications in the field and the on-farm and off-farm disposition. If you have somebody coming in and taking your compost and hauling it away, you really need to keep track of what's in it. And so what the law suggests is that you do your manure samples, and then when somebody comes and takes your manure, you give them a letter or a list that says this is what's in your manure. You're getting this many pounds of nitrogen, you're getting this much phosphorus, and so on. So that would help prevent over-application and reduce the impact of salts on your productive capacity. Important records to keep: soil and manure sample. You can keep those in a file. Your lagoon level. Freeboard maintenance, and that has to do, of course, with your lagoon level. Transfers of manure, if you're transferring it to somebody else, you need to keep track of where it went. Your manure application records by field. Remember, Don pointed out that we have to have the new nutrient management plans will be field specific. And what that means is that we will have a specification sheet, is that what it's called, for 590, has a specification sheet, and on that it reports the existing level of the nutrients that are in the soil sample, and then how much manure you're going to apply to it. You will have one of those for each field because it also keeps track of the cropping that you're doing on that field. So in the past, we were able to say, well, I've got this many fields in this soil, we'll lump all those fields together. Now we have to have one of those spec sheets for each field. I think that's about the majority of that change, right? I look at him because he's the guy that knows the answers. We want to know crop records. Why would it be important to have your crop records? What does the crop do in your nutrient cycle? Each crop pulls a different level of the nutrients out of the soil. So if you have crop records with your yields, let's say the yield for Cache Valley for corn silage is 17.5 ton. But you're a good manager. You get out there early, you get your crop in, you treat it right, you get 22. But if you don't keep track of your yields, then you're probably going to be stuck with people assuming that it's the 17.5 for the county, and you're going to lose 30% of the nutrient uptake that would have happened with the 22.5 that you had. So it's important that you keep track of what your yields are doing, so that you know when somebody comes around to question it, you've got the record to show. We had a place here in the valley that had way too much manure for the number of acres that they had. And they had a young lady from Idaho who was probably green about doing such things. The only way she could accommodate all of the manure that they had was have 36 ton to the acre alfalfa. The only way she could accommodate all the manure they had was to have 36 ton alfalfa. How many of you would like to have 36 ton of alfalfa? That doesn't happen. And so it's important that we know what your yields are. There will be some annual reporting rights. If you have to have a CAFO permit, then there will be some new annual reporting requirements that will come along with that. And these are the examples that are floating around. There's the extension examples, and then there's the one extension example was made by Boyd Kitchen out in the Uinta Basin. It's pretty good. The producer NMP activities and record keeping is in the 3-ring binder. You can really develop your own. I know people who just take a pocket calendar, put it in the tractor, then anybody that hauls a load of manure for you knows that when they haul a load of manure out, they turn to that day and they write down they took 2 tons or 2 loads of manure to such and such field. And that's all you need. Then if you want to, on Saturday night before the weekly bath, take that in and put it into your computer, you've got it. But if it's not in the tractor, where it can be done immediately, it won't happen. Because keeping records is not a fun thing to do. It's not counterproductive, but it's certainly not all that productive.